Hello everyone, very good morning. Today we will deal with chapter 4 of 11th class, Landscape of the Soul. So what this chapter is about, I want your full attention while I am explaining this chapter because many students find this chapter little difficult. So it's not like that. If you listen word by word, if you pay attention from the very beginning, then this is the easiest chapter. Nothing is there, only two interesting stories are there. So let's start this chapter. What is about? So there are some figures at the top. Some words are there like anecdote, delicate realism, figurative painting, illusionistic likeness, conceptual space. So all these terms we will study here, and I'll explain every term to you when it comes in the chapter. So let's start. A wonderful old tale is told about the painter Wu Daozi. So Wu Daozi, as the name indicates, this is something related to Chinese name Wu Daozi. So a wonderful old tale story is told about a painter whose name is Wu Daozi, who lived in the 18th century. So the story is of 18th century. His last painting was a landscape commissioned by the Tang Emperor Xuanzong to decorate a palace wall. So there was an emperor whose name was Xuanzong. So he ordered him to make a picture, a painting of a landscape, which was the last painting of Wu Daozi, and the emperor wanted to decorate his palace wall. That's why he ordered Wu Daozi to make a picture of landscape. And how it come to be the end of his painting career, and how it is the last painting of that painter, we'll get to know. The master had hidden his work behind a screen. Who is the master? Wu Daozi. So you can assume that whenever a painter paints anything, he covers the canvas with a sheet. Why? So that the colors may not spread. So the master had hidden his work behind a screen, so only the emperor would see it. He wanted that only emperor should first see his painting, none else. So finally this emperor Zuezong entered there. For a long while, the emperor admired the beautiful scenes, discovering forest, high mountains, waterfalls, clouds floating in an immense sky. As the picture was about the landscape, so we expect all these things like forest, mountains, wonderful scenes. So he made all these things. Men on hilly paths, birds in flight, so he observed all these things for a long while. So long while the emperor was standing in front of that picture, and he admired all these things that the painter has painted in that. Now the painter is saying, "Look, sir," said the painter. This sir spelling you might find weird, but in early English there are some words which were written like this. So it is, "Look, sir," said the painter, "in the cave at the foot of a mountain dwells a spirit." When the painter realized that the master is not going at the depth of this painting, he is not realizing the real worth. So he started explaining his painting, and he said, "Look, sir, in this cave at the foot of the mountain dwells a spirit." There is a cave at the foot of the mountain, and there lives a spirit. So you might have seen one cartoon also, when there was one thief who entered in such a cave, and the cave was closed from inside, and he lived there only, and the cave was full of gold and jewels. If you don't know, then it's okay, we'll explain this chapter also. In this cave at the foot of the mountain dwells a spirit. The painter clapped his hands, and the entrance of the cave opened. So the painter wanted to show him the real worth, and he said, "Sir, there is a one spirit living there." And the painter clapped his hands, and the entrance of the cave opened. This is an imagination. This is just an imaginative story that the writer wanted to say. So what happened? Then the cave opened. The inside is splendid beyond anything words can convey. And when the cave opened, the inside that cave, everything was so wonderful, so mesmerizing, that we can't say through words. "Please let me show your majesty the way," the painter is saying. The painter entered the cave. It means the painter entered in the painting, but the entrance closed behind him, and before the astonished emperor could move or utter a word, the painting had vanished from the wall. So, this is an imaginative story, I would say. So, what happened? The painter entered in the painting, and the door was shut, and this emperor was confused. Before he could utter a word, the painting was vanished from the wall. Not a trace of Wu Daozi's brush was left. Everything was disappeared, and the artist was never seen in this world. So, what kind of painting was that? So, what the writer wanted to say? Listen, student, in the whole chapter, we will deal only with the art, especially with this painting, this art we will deal. So first is this, that the only owner, the painter, know what he has painted on the canvas and what the real message he wanted to give. So now you might get confused. I know, when the chapter continues you'll understand what this suggests to you, what this story tells, what the writer wants to tell. Now see, such stories played an important part in China's classical education. Like in India, we are having many mythological stories that we understand, that we listen, and we sometimes finds it too hard to believe. So, like this, such stories plays an important part in China's classical education. The books of Confucius and Zhuangzi are full of them. These are the name of the two Chinese writers. They help the master to guide his disciple in the right direction. So, what these books are about, they help the master to guide his disciple in the right direction. Beyond the anecdote short story, they are deeply revealing of the spirit in which art was considered. They believe that a painter should put his heart and soul in the painting. He is the only one who know what he has drawn and what is the real meaning of that painting. No one else can understand that. It means the painter was so much connected with the inner soul of the painting, that he knew nothing else then. Contrast this story or another famous one about a painter who would draw the eye of a dragon he had painted. Contrast opposite to this story. Now, what this story is about, Wu Daozi was that much dedicated, that much included in that painting, that only he knew what is the real meaning of that painting. No one else can understand. So he dealt with the inner spirit of that painting. And apart from this contrast of the story, or another famous one about a painter who wouldn't draw the eye of a dragon. He drew one dragon and he couldn't draw the eye. Why? For fear it would fly out of the painting. Why? Because the painting was looking so real that he thought that if he had drawn the eye of that dragon, then the painting would fly out of the out of that canvas. With an old with an old story from my native Flanders. Flanders is the name of a place that I had most representative of Western painting. So here the writer is saying that one more example I'm having of that Western painting that I find the most representative apart from this dragon. So what he's saying, see, in 15th century Antwerp, a master blacksmith called Quentin Matsy fell in love with the painter's daughter. So one story was of Wu Daozi, another story he is telling contrary to that. These two are total different from each other. That story deals with the inner conscience of the painter. Now what this story is about, in the 15th century there was a master blacksmith called Quentin Matsy fall in love with the painter's daughter. See, one is blacksmith and one is a painter's daughter. See the difference. The father would not accept a son-in-law in such a profession. So Quentin sneaked into the painter's studio and painted a fly on his latest panel. So what he did, he wanted to marry his beloved, but he was a blacksmith. So the painter refused. So what he did, he sneaked into the painter's studio. Somehow he was able to sneak into the studio, and he painted a fly on his latest panel with such a delicate realism, exact picture, that the master tried to sweat it away before he realized what had happened. And that fly was so real, he painted it like that delicate realism, that the painter even couldn't understand what happened, and he tried to sweat away that fly. Then he realized, oh my god, this is not a real fly, this is painted. Quentin was immediately admitted as an apprentice into his studio. He married his beloved and went on to become one of the most famous painters of his age. The painter was highly impressed, and somehow their marriage was settled. So Quentin was able to marry his beloved, and he was one of the most famous painter of his age. These two stories illustrate what each form of art is trying to achieve. Now see, now the writer himself is saying that these two stories, one is of Quentin Matsy, who was a blacksmith and wanted to marry a painter's daughter, and he sneaked into the studio and drew a fly there. Fine. And other was Wu Daozi, who wanted to show the real cave to his emperor. So these two stories illustrate what each form of art is trying to achieve: a perfect illusionistic likeness in Europe, the essence of inner life and spirit in Asia. One story is related with Europe and one is related to Asia. So illusionistic likeness, again I am saying, to take things as they are, because drawing of a dragon, drawing of a fly is the exact copy, while entering in the cave is dealing with the inner life or spirit. In the Chinese story, the emperor commissions a painting and appreciates its outer appearance. Now he is explaining. In Chinese story, the emperor commissions a painting and appreciates its outer appearance only, but the artist reveals to him the true meaning of his work. You remember, na, Wu Daozi? The emperor may rule over the territory he has conquered, but only the artist knows the way within. Let me show the way, the Dao, a word that means both the path or the method and the mysterious works of the universe. So, though the emperor can rule over the country, but the real meaning of that painting was understandable only by Wu Daozi. The painting is gone, but the artist has reached his goal beyond any material appearance. So he need not to show anybody. Artist, what he has done, he has achieved his goal as he entered in the painting, and he was successful in dealing with the inner soul. So now see, a classical Chinese landscape is not meant to reproduce an actual view as would as Western figurative painting. So the real purpose of Chinese painting is not to show the actual view, while the Western painting aim to show the actual view. Whereas the European painters wants you to borrow his eyes and look at a particular landscape exactly as he saw it from a specific angle. In the Chinese painter doesn't choose any single viewpoint. His landscape is not a real one and you can enter it from any point. Then travel in it. The artist creates a path for your eyes to travel up and down, then back again in leisurely movement. Student, this is very clear. These words are hard only. The meaning is very clear that in the Western figurative painting, we see the things as they are. While in the Chinese painting, we are free. We are free to think according to our own understanding. We can think according to our level, what we want to conclude from that painting. It's very clear that if a fly is drawn exact, then you will call it a fly only. You will not call it any insect, snake. No, you will call, yes, this is a fly only, so this is limited. But if a picture of landscape or anything is drawn here, you might appreciate mountains, some will appreciate clouds, some will appreciate trees. It means you are free and you can travel in the painting according to your own wish. This even more true in the case of horizontal scroll, in which the action of slowly opening one section of the painting, then rolling it up to move on to the another, adds a dimension of time which is unknown in any other form of painting. It also requires the active participation of the viewer, who decided at what pace he will travel through the painting. You might have seen many paintings like this that are hard to understand. You take some time to travel through those paintings. So this is what he's saying to you: a participation which is physical as well as mental. The Chinese painter doesn't want you to borrow his eyes, he wants you to enter his mind. The landscape is an inner one, a spiritual and conceptual space. So this is the difference between these two type of paintings, two type of art forms, that one deals with the inner soul and what deals with figurative paintings. Now these two paragraphs, please listen very carefully what this exactly about. These are telling the notion of the world, universe to us. This concept is expressed as Shan Shui, literally mountain water, which used together represent the word landscape. More than two elements of an image, these represents two complementary poles reflecting the Taoist view of universe. If you search in the Google Taoist view, you'll have many ideas about it. What Taoist view is about universe. The mountain is yang, reaching vertical towards hand. Here, yin and yang, two terms they have given. One is yang, yang is mountain, reaching vertical towards heaven, stable, warm, and dry in the sun, while water is yin, horizontal and resting on the earth, fluid, moist, and cool. Now, see, students, sky and earth. So, one is yang, which is mountain, and one is yin, and their features are also different. The interaction of yin, the receptive feminine aspect of universe energy, and its counterpart yang. So, yin is considered as the female part of earth universe, and yang is considered to be the male part of universe. Yang, active and masculine, is of course a fundamental notion of Taoism. What is often overlooked is an essential third element, the middle void, where their interaction take place. This can be compared with the yogic practice of pranayam: breathe in, retain, breathe out. The suspension of breath is the void where meditation occurs. The middle void is essential. Nothing can happen without it. Hence, the importance of the white unpainted space in Chinese landscape. So, in Chinese landscape, you will be having white part, and that white part, that uncolored part, tells a lot about the picture. This is also where man finds a fundamental role in that space between heaven and earth. He becomes the conduct of communication between both poles of the universe. Both poles of universe, yin and yang, male and female. His presence is essential even if it's only suggested. Far from being lost or oppressed by the lofty peaks, he is our Francis Chen's wonderful expression, the eye of the landscape. So these are the just a painting. If you go just study this Taoist view, if you study this more points about it, you will get to know why he has taken yin and yang in the pictures and what does this white landscape means. Now come this getting inside outside art. This is something related to India, and many questions are asked from this part, and very easy this is also. Now see, when French painter Jean Duffet started the concept of art brut in 1940s, the art of the untrained visionary was of minority interest. Now student, not everyone is artist. Some are having hobby. They don't take painting as their profession. They don't have degrees in that. They don't have any professional training in that. Still they are very creative. So this is art brut, when this untrained, when the artist is not trained according to that level. Suppose I'm a teacher, I'm teaching, I'm having interest in art and craft, and I'm drawing something at my home and I'm drawing very nicely. That is art brut. Why? Because that is not my profession. I'm not professionally skilled. I have not taken any certificate in that. So that is this untrained visionary. From its almost late beginning, outsider art had gradually become the fastest growing area of interest in contemporary art internationally. So, after this French painter's efforts, the untrained artists are also taken into consideration. This genre is decided as the art of those who have no right to be artists, as they have received no formal training, that I have discussed, yet show talent and artistic insight. Their works are a stimulating contrast to a lot of mainstreams offering. So they are highly talented, but they are not professionally skilled. So those are that art is called outside art or the art brut. Around the time Duffet was propounding his concept in India, an untutored genius was creating paradise. When this French artist Dufay, he was taking this idea. Already in India, an artist was working, an untutored genius was creating paradise. Years ago, the little patch of jungle that had begun clearing to make himself a garden, sculpted with stone and recycled material, is known to the world today as the Rock Garden at Chandigarh. So, one man, he cleared a patch of jungle forest and he built a very beautiful rock garden that is in Chandigarh. You all might have heard about it. Its 80-year-old creator director Nek Chand is now hailed as India's biggest contributor to the outsider art. He was also not professionally skilled. He was not any painter. He was not an having any degree in that, still he has made so nice this garden. You all have heard about it. The 50th issue, spring 2005, of Raw Vision, this is the name of a magazine, a UK based magazine, pioneer in outsider at publications, features Nek Chand and his rock garden sculpture Woman by the Waterfall on its anniversary issues cover. So this magazine has taken the picture of this rock garden as their anniversary rock front page issue cover page. So that much famous this is. The notion is idea of art brut or raw brut was of works that were in their raw state as regards culture and artistic influence. Anything and everything from a tin to a sink to a broken down car could be a material for a workout. If you have seen this rock garden in Chandigarh, you have seen that every waste material, whatever it is, he has used in making this garden. Something Nekchand had taken to dizzying height, dizzying up to a great level, dizzying sar chakra dena. Recognizing his art as an outstanding testimony of the difference a single man can make when he lives his dream. The Swiss Commission of UNESCO will be honoring him by way of a European exposition of his work. The fifth 5-month interactive show Realm of Nekchand, beginning October, will be held at the leading museums in Switzerland. This is a great achievement. Belgium, France, and Italy. The biggest reward is walking through the garden and seeing people enjoy my creation, Nekchand says. Nekchand says that apart from all the rewards that he got from the government or from any other agency he got, but the biggest reward is walking through the garden and seeing people enjoying my creation. This is Nekchand's ideas. So here we can say that Nekchand has used waste material, and he showed that even a single waste thing can be used if we are having that much ideas, creative ideas in our mind. So that is art brut or outsider art.